Greetings and welcome to another episode of the TED in Your Head podcast. I'm your host, Ted Moreno, certified hypnotherapist and coach. Today, I'm happy to have as my guest Amir Nowrouz. He is a licensed acupuncturist. How you doing today, Amir?
I'm great, Ted. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest. Very interested in hearing more about what you do. So here is Amir's bio. Amir is a licensed acupuncturist and certified massage therapist. He's the founder of Rose Acupuncture in Pasadena, California. He specializes in orthopedics, sports acupuncture, pain management, stress reduction, and overall health support. His introduction to acupuncture began with his own struggles as a cross-country athlete dealing with allergies and physical stress that affected his quality of life. Consistent acupuncture treatment provided the relief he had long searched for and ultimately inspired his commitment to helping others move from reactive care to proactive, sustainable wellness. Today, Amir brings his clinical training and personal experience together to support patients on their healing journeys and help them move with greater ease, confidence, and resilience. So that's a lot. So you do a lot. Let's begin. What are all the things that you do? I know you do other things besides acupuncture and massage. So fill me in on the different ways that you help people, please.
So, for a lot of patients, they come to me with chronic pain or just like a recent injury. So, a lot of what I do is kind of set the expectation of what acupuncture can do for them, where they are in their life, and how my experience as a massage therapist can fit into that practice. Right now, I'm doing a lot of hands-on work, but I'm slowly trying to get a lot of my patients to look into herbal treatments. And then I also offer some dietary recommendations depending on some of the questions that are asked during the session.
Okay, so you do acupuncture, you do massage, you deal with herbs, right? Is there anything else you do? I know you do cupping, which is, I guess that's part of, acupuncture, right?
Yeah, cupping is part of both acupuncture and massage. Both have a little bit of a different training, but they're essentially doing the same thing. We're trying to decompress different parts of the body, especially like all that dense muscle that's just either knotted up in one location or the entire, let's say, the entire limb
Hmm. I'll tell you
where the
what, let's
muscle's
come.
pressing on a nerve.
Yeah,
So cupping is
let's
down.
come back to the
Sorry?
cupping thing. Um,
Yeah.
what maybe you can help our reader or our readers and our listeners understand what acupuncture is. Now, before we go any further, I had my first acupuncture treatment when I was in high school. So I've been getting acupuncture all my life, and part of the reason I have you on is because I want people to know about it and how valuable and how efficient and efficacious it is. So. What is acupuncture and how does it work?
Well, acupuncture is simply a tool in traditional Chinese medicine or in Chinese medicine. We're using single-use prepackaged sterile needles. For comparison, like a sewing needle is 1 millimeter thick. Ours range from 0.15 to 0.30 millimeters thick. And so we use these acupuncture needles to stimulate points on the body that we call acupuncture points, and they run along a channel starting from one end of the body to the other. And what we do is we manipulate chi. What chi is it's hard to define chi. It has many different functions depending on what organs associated with, but we're manipulating chi to tell the nervous system to respond to a certain condition or respond to a symptom. Bring resources over here, start absorbing more nutrients, or in other words, go to sleep.
Hmm.
Those patients who can't fall asleep is like, just go to sleep. Stimulate the rest and digest function.
Okay. So what you're saying is you use the real almost hair thin needles
Mhm.
to affect the chi in the body
Yes,
and maybe send it into certain areas or stop it from going into certain areas. Is that right?
exactly.
Okay. And if you absolutely had to define chi,
Mhm.
what would you say that is?
I would say chi is the motive force of the body. So when we talk about chi, we should always talk about it in relation to its partner blood. So this is where we get into the yin yang aspect of Chinese medicine. There's nothing that is totally yin or totally yang. They're always within relation to one another. So qi is yang to blood yin. Qi is the commander of blood, and blood is the mother of qi. So I would say qi is the motive force that tells blood where to go, the nutritious blood that supplies nutrients to the body. And blood is the mother that anchors qi to the material substance of your body. So, in other words, it's for some people, it would be the soul that guides the body through earth, heaven and earth. The human being is the perfect marriage of the sun heats with the nutrients of the earth. And that is where chi and blood come into play.
Wow, I've never heard it explained that way, but that is very much kind of in line with the philosophical underpinnings of traditional Chinese medicine. Can you say a little bit about what traditional Chinese medicine is?
Yeah, so traditional Chinese medicine is we'll call it the bureaucratic form of Chinese medicine. So Chinese medicine has developed for thousands of years. The oldest evidence we have is about 5,000 years old, and that's physical evidence of an ox scapula, shoulder blade, and they've taken a hot poker and written, patient, female, age, symptom, treatment.
Wow.
So that's 5,000 years old. So they've already created an entire system of asking questions, developing a diagnosis, and performing a treatment protocol. TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, which is my master's, is when the Communist Party of China took over and standardized the medicine, made it digestible in an academic format. Because when they were deciding, do we focus on Western medicine and give up Chinese medicine, or do we somehow combine the two? Mao decided to combine the two, or at least keep Chinese medicine, and so they standardized it. We're using these acupuncture points, these diagnoses, these herbal formulas.
Well, that's really fascinating. So, traditional Chinese medicine is thousands of years old, and it sounds like there's a whole philosophy behind it, which we don't really have time to get into. But
Yeah.
acupuncture is based on the philosophy of traditional Chinese medicine.
Yeah, because acupuncture, well, we'll say Chinese medicine is 5,000 years old, TCM is 2,500 years old, and
Oh,
acupuncture falls within that TCM because they didn't have stainless steel needles 5,000 years ago. They had their
oh,
elbow. They had
they
their
had what?
they had their elbow. They had their knuckles. Those were their needles back in the day.
Okay. Didn't they used to use bamboo needles at one time?
I'm not sure about bamboo, but they did have, rhinoceros horns. They had bones. They had other utensils, but they were not as thin.
Wow.
And they would not needle patients to the depth that we needle today with our very, very thin needles.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. So, so how does acupuncture help? I mean, I guess why would somebody go to a acupuncturist? What would be some of the things? And I know I mentioned some of them in the bio, but what are some of the things that that you would recommend acupuncture for?
Hmm. So I'll start vague first. So acupuncture can treat everything. I mean, absolutely everything.
Hmm.
And it works very well when paired with Western medicine. So, for example, right now I have a tea for myself because after the World Series and Halloween, you get invited out. For me, my eczema gets worse with stress, so having a private practice, and then having alcohol at one location, get invited out again, having alcohol at another location. So stress and alcohol makes my eczema worse. And so I have a Western medicine that I get to put on topically while I also drink my Chinese tea. And as I said before, the medicine is 5,000 years old. And within 5,000 years, you're going to see famine, war, epidemics, invasion. And so the medicine was able to develop through all these horrific tragedies. Think of like a measles outbreak. They didn't
Hmm.
have blood tests. So they
Yeah.
looked at the body, they observed to see what's going on. And so acupuncture and herbs especially have the ability to treat everyone. So everyone will come to us with, their symptoms. We take a look, we'll have an answer.
Mm,
It may not be the 100% right answer. It
mhm.
may need some Western medicine help.
Okay. All right. So, what are the most common reasons people would go to an acupuncturist? I mean, I hear you when you say it can treat everything, but what are the most common reasons that, let's say, in your practice, people come to you?
Pain.
Okay.
Pain is the most common reason. It's honestly one of the greatest motivators for people
Sure.
to seek out acupuncture. And so that's where a lot of patients come to see me is the pain that they feel, whether it's a muscle knot, repetitive stress, or even arthritis, like bone on bone
Mhm.
arthritis. And so that's where people come to see me. And then after our, initial treatment, I kind of tell them, your pain is happening. I don't think it's psychosomatic, but I do think there's an internal medicine issue. And so that's where I say I would treat you as an internal medicine patient for now, and we'll see how it goes. Other people are totally healthy. They just have a muscle knot. And I'm like, okay, great. We're going to use a little bit more massage modalities. We're going to try cupping. We'll try my elbow before we do the needles for someone who's scared of needles.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we'll do needles to really get that trigger point out. And so I found a great way to blend the two of them together.
Yes, and I've actually experienced that when I went to go see you for that knot I had in my scapula, and you did both needling and massage,
Mhm.
and you did a little bit of cupping, and it made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Um, and that was really awesome. So, do the needles, and I know, but for the sake of our listeners and readers, do the needles hurt?
No. Ideally, the treatments are not supposed to hurt. And, the way Americans see pain, it's not supposed to be painful. So like my internal medicine patients, especially those who are anxious, treatment's supposed to be calming, provide a space where they're supposed to rest and finally get from fight or flight to rest and digest. For my orthopedic sports acu patients, I have a good conversation with them about the difference between pain and discomfort. So
Yes,
pain is, ow, you're hurting me if you don't stop doing that.
right.
Discomfort is, oh, that hurts, but it feels good while you're doing it. So
Yes.
sometimes I want the treatment to be uncomfortable because we're working out a muscle knot. We're undoing fascial tension that travels up the entire arm. Sometimes there's so much pain, we're just going to create a little bit of discomfort and then it's gone. And so sometimes, especially with needles, I talk to my new patients about what to expect to feel with the needle. And I describe it as we say in Chinese medicine, it's called de qi or arrival of qi.
Mm,
And what it's supposed to feel like is like a dull, achy, or even deep sensation in that acupuncture point.
mm,
And that can be a couple of things. It's stagnant chi, that radiating pain that's localized,
mm,
becoming undone and starting to move.
mm,
Or we're just telling the nervous system, hey, come here. The elbow's in pain. There's inflammation. We need to move blood, bring more nutritious blood, and get the healing process going.
mm.
And some patients have even reported, well, I'm done needling. I go to my station to get more needles, get a different packet, and they're asking me, are you still massaging me? I'm like, no.
Huh.
And they're like, oh, well, I still feel pressure on that point. I'm like, oh, okay. And like, is it bearable? And they're like, oh, it feels good. I'm like, great. Keep it up. Well, you're doing just fine.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah. So, in my experience, in all the acupuncture I've ever had, the needles have never hurt. If anything, it felt kind of like, I guess, like a mosquito bite, you know.
Yeah. And that's
But
the sharp needle hitting the dermatomes on the skin.
right.
That's where that sharp pain comes from.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing that keeps people from going to acupuncture is the idea of needles. But again, hair thin needles, and they don't hurt when they go in.
Exactly.
So we talked about cupping, right? And maybe you could explain what cupping is and how it works. And for those people that have ever seen like dark circles on somebody's back, like during the summer, you see like people walking around, especially women, right, with
Hmm.
their bare backs exposed. You see those round circles. That's what happens after somebody gets cupped. So what is cupping exactly? And maybe you could dig a little bit deeper into how it actually impacts uh, the body in a positive way.
Right. So cupping, the way I like to describe it is it's myofascial decompression. And so the muscles are interlaced with fascia around them. As muscles tend to condense, the fascia will condense in between muscles and then they don't move on their own.
So myo is muscle.
Yeah.
Fascial is not muscle, but what? What
The
is?
fascia is the almost like cobweb-like substance between your skin, your muscles, muscle between muscle, that allows things to move. So if you take your skin and try to move it to turn it completely around and it bounces back, that's fascia preventing your skin from moving too far from its original point. So there's supposed to be a little bit of movement, and when muscles condense, fascia will condense, and then you'll feel that tenseness in that area. And then when muscles condense even more, they'll sometimes press up against a nerve, and that's where you can
Mm,
kind of get that numbness, that tingling sensation. So
mm,
then when you come to us, we have to rule out, okay, let's rule out the spine first. Okay, great. It's not the spine. Let's go to the next joint along that nerve.
okay.
And so what cupping does, especially for the forearm, because if we're dealing with carpal tunnel and I press into that dense muscle, I'm pressing into the muscle that's again pressing into the nerve, and that's very uncomfortable. Cupping allows us to decompress, take that muscle off the nerve while also opening up the muscle cells. Now, we are destroying a little bit of the muscle cells, and that's where you kind of see all that really dark red or purple
Hmm.
cupping marks, and that's just capillary beds and muscle fibers breaking.
Mm,
And so that tells us that's where the tension was, especially on the back. And so that's
okay.
where I put my needles to allow more blood flow into that area. And then I put, my evil bone water that I love to use on all my patients. Then I put a heat lamp over it
Hmm.
to create more inflammation, because with inflammation things expand
Hmm.
and then blood can flow back through.
Hmm. Okay. Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So, what is new that I'm learning from you is the whole idea of blood and chi working together.
Exactly.
Right. So I wasn't really aware of that. So I'm educated today on the fact that you're trying to use the body's chi to get blood and the nutrients blood carries into different parts of the body that need more of the blood or more of the nutrients.
Exactly.
Okay. Very interesting. Now, what about herbs? Obviously, you deal with herbs, so tell us a little bit about how that works, right? Because everybody knows about herbs, but Chinese herbs are, I think, a little bit different from, something you might buy at, over the counter at Whole Foods. So maybe you
Right.
can tell us about that.
I mean, we could describe it as like a Venn diagram because there is mint in Chinese herbs, which you can buy from Whole Foods. We also have catnip in
Hmm.
Chinese medicine that's used in a lot of formulas. So for my herbal pharmacy is a little bit limited. For my office space is a little small. So on hand, I have more herbs that are geared towards physical pain. So someone who's sore from exercise, sore from an injury, and trying to get back on their feet. And a couple of common cold formulas that I used a couple weeks ago when I was out for the count.
Mm.
For my other patients who come to me and I say this is more of an internal medicine issue, I'll have to order the herbs. And now I'm just trying to find a good source where I can at least get the herb shipped to their house. I
Mm.
think I found a good company that I want to go with, where I can at least say, hey, I want to use this base formula. It's a
Mhm.
traditional formula, but they also have night sweats. And I know this herb individually is great for night sweats, so I'm just going to add it to that list.
Hmm.
I think that's the next step.
Okay, okay. I went to an acupuncturist many years ago, and they gave me a bag with like seeds and roots and flowers, and they're like,
Mhm.
boil this for an hour, right?
Yeah.
And so then you needed to boil it some more and add some more water. So it was a little bit of a process. And then, drinking the remaining liquid. It was very helpful, but I would imagine not all of your herbs require that level of preparation, I would think.
Yeah, not for my practice. My practice, I do, I think a lot of acupuncturists would love to go with raw herbs because it's just in its natural form.
Yeah.
I provide more powdered herbs.
Yeah.
So, the herbs are boiled, they're dehydrated, kind of like what is it called? Instant coffee.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, because I want my patients to taste the herbs, because
Ah.
taste and smell are a huge aspect when it comes to Chinese medicine.
Mm.
I ask a lot of my patients about their cravings. What are you
Hmm.
craving right now?
Mm.
Um, However, some formulas are very bitter, and patients just like, it makes me want to, you know,
Right.
throw up. I'm like, then stop doing that. We're
Yeah.
going to find some tea pills. So you just take it like a pill. It's easy to travel with, or tinctures.
Right.
Tinctures are great for anyone going to the gym constantly. They don't want to take any sort of NSAIDs afterwards, or
Right.
they want to get away from CBD. It can help, but they want a more something from Chinese medicine. It's like, well, let's do this tincture. It'll taste
Mm.
bitter, it's highly concentrated, but it's easy to transport.
Right. That makes sense. You don't want to have to carry around a bag of herbs and find a place to boil them and cook them.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Um, yeah, that's really fascinating. And now I heard you say the other day, and I found this really interesting that even though it may be difficult to do acupuncture over Zoom, or,
Mhm.
obviously you can't, it would be difficult to do massage, or if not impossible to do massage over Zoom, people could still reach out to you and say, hey, I have a cold or the
Mhm.
flu. Can you put together some herbs and drop ship them to my house? And I guess that's something you can do as well, right?
Definitely. It'll be a little difficult because every acupuncturist has their opinion. There's a saying, you'll have 10 acupuncturists and 11 opinions
Mm-hmm.
about one case.
Mm-hmm.
Because some acupuncturists say, I want to see your tongue, I want to see your pulse. I'm not giving you herbs unless otherwise.
Okay.
However, I did have a patient who unfortunately was, under the weather. They were going to go on a trip. I said, come to the parking lot. I asked him a couple questions. Do you have a sore throat? Yes. Are you sweating? Not really. Okay, great. By that, that's enough information for me to see if this formula is going to work. So I sold them just enough herbs to last a couple days. They took it within two, they felt better, and they were able to go on their trip.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. So, how do you become a licensed acupuncturist, right? So you are licensed in the state of California, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How do you do that? What does that take? What does that entail?
Well, in order to sit for the California or national exam, you're going to need a master's degree. My master's is in traditional Chinese medicine, and that classification has been changing over the years. I think now it's Masters of Acupuncture and Chinese Herbs.
Hmm.
And now even schools are offering doctorate degrees for new students, but also for graduates like myself who want to go back and learn a little bit more, learn a modality that wasn't necessarily needed for the state or national test. But still, if there's research being done on those modalities that prove its efficacy.
Hmm.
And myself, I have a undergrad in kinesiology and public health from Oregon State University. And then I became a massage therapist. So that's my background going into Chinese medicine. A lot of my colleagues, the cohort above me, my cohort, and the one behind me, a lot of them are herbologists. They all went into herbs with intense motivation to learn how to heal themselves because it's very cost effective and it's something you can even grow in your own backyard.
Hmm.
So it
Yeah,
was a
that
very
makes sense.
interesting environment where I could learn from them, and then they come to me for just little questions like, "Oh, my patient's wrist hurts. What would you do?" I'm like, "Massage the forearm, see what happens."
Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Okay. So you have a master's in traditional Chinese medicine.
Yeah,
Wow. So even to sit for the test, the licensure test, you need to have a master's?
yeah. So yeah, you need a master's. My program was 3 years and one trimester, and then the state test was 200 questions in 5 hours.
Wow. Okay. So the master's in traditional Chinese medicine teaches you how to do the acupuncture.
Yeah, it teaches the foundation first, and then you get introduced to needles, and then introduced to the clinic.
Okay. So again, this is not something that I knew. Are there acupuncture schools that just teach you what you need to know to sit for the test?
Yeah, the bare minimum is to help you sit for the test. Every school is a little different depending on
Mhm.
how much funds they have and what they're going to provide for the students. My school was a nonprofit, so it was very efficient in teaching us what's needed for the test. But then you had to go the extra mile, go with the teachers, talk to them about their practice, learn from them. Other schools will have bigger clinics and even externships. I mean, my school before COVID actually had I think it was an externship with their sister school in China.
Hmm.
And so they
Wow.
used to take trips, I think like a couple week trips over the summer. And unfortunately, that I don't think that's been revitalized since COVID.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. Very interesting. So you have two locations in the Southern California, Pasadena area. Is that right?
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And so if somebody wanted to come see you or consult with you or make an appointment with you, how could they do that, Amir?
Well, they could go to my website, rose-acupuncture.com. There'll always be like a book now option so they can get their appointments, they can get their account started, and then I'd reach out to them. They can email me at amirnow at rose-acupuncture.com. One of the reasons I use Rose Acupuncture helps people pronounce my last name now Rose, and so it's right in my email. But if they want to learn more about what I do, what acupuncture is capable of, they can follow my Instagram, amir.lac.cmt. And I'm trying my hand at TikTok, so they can also follow me on TikTok at amir.the.lac.
Okay. All right. And I want to make it clear that Rose Acupuncture and Rose in your email is Rose, not Rouz like the last four letters of your name.
Exactly, yes.
It'd be
Thank you.
Rose hyphen acupuncture, Rose, right? Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, what an interesting conversation. I mean, I thought I knew a lot about acupuncture, but I learned a lot from this conversation that I did not know. So I appreciate that. So, is there anything else you wanted to add about what you do or about acupuncture, or maybe what people should think about when they consider seeking acupuncture?
Yeah, so in my practice, what I want to do is at least impart some knowledge on my patients. So I'm very glad that you learned something new today. I'm trying to kind of change people's perception of acupuncture, get them a little bit more confident in themselves to walk in. Because a lot of patients see acupuncture as, oh, only if my insurance will cover it.
Hmm.
Acupuncturists in the past were, what we call, they're the doctors of the village. They're someone you went to when you had a cold that wouldn't go away.
Hmm.
Maybe you still have more of a dry throat and lungs from COVID. Go see the acupuncturist. I make myself available to a lot of my patients after hours. So, you're not just paying for the time you see me,
Hmm.
but a lot of my patients have started to become more comfortable texting me saying, oh, my knee's buckling.
Hmm.
Why is that? Or I don't know why I'm having such a sore throat, but I'm getting negative COVID tests. Why is that? I want to give them some advice. Maybe try these herbs if you have them in your house. If not, have someone go get them. In the meantime, book an appointment, or if you get better, no need to book an appointment.
Okay.
I
Well,
want to try to be a resource for people as much as possible.
Well, you're definitely that, and you're very articulate. You would make a great teacher. You're very articulate and very thorough in your explanations of all of this. So, I appreciate you being a guest on my podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. This is great.
Of course. And again, what if somebody wanted to go to your website? Once again, what is your website, please?
My website is rose, dash acupuncture.com.
Okay, Rose-acupuncture.com. And of course, if somebody wants to get in touch with me for a complimentary consultation, tedmoreno.com/contact. So thanks everybody for tuning in. And if you want to reach out to me for my experience with Amir, feel free to do that. And Amir, thanks so much and good luck. And I will be back in your clinic soon.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, take good care. Bye.
You as well.
Okay.